Hi, good morning, everybody. How are you? Let me make sure that I have control. There I am. And we're working. All right. Thank you guys for having me today. I'm super excited to be presenting to you guys today. Would have loved to have been doing this in person, of course, and being able to talk with you and see you. But the really nice thing, though, is doing this from home is that you get little messages, if y'all can see that, from your children wishing you good luck on your presentation. So that kind of calmed the nerves a little bit and really helped out. But hopefully we can all get together soon and see each other again. So today I am working with you guys, or talking with you guys about what to expect when implementing. So I've been implementing Cityworks for about 11, 12 years now. And I have recently changed roles at NewEdge Services that I'm now doing more of a sales versus a project management role. So I thought before all this implementation knowledge left my head, it would be a good time to pass it on and do a short presentation for you guys, and just giving you some tips and tricks on maybe what you can do prior to an implementation or during an implementation, just to help you through the process. So we're going to start this off with a poll, and Cindy is going to be switching out over to the poll. Hopefully this works, fingers crossed. And really the poll, the first question is just, are you thinking about doing an implementation? That could be a new division or a department. You could be starting from scratch. You could be bringing on PLL, or if you're just good where you are with Cityworks and you're not thinking about doing anything. And we'll give everybody just a few seconds to answer that question. Okay. People still putting in responses?
Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to close the poll.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I don't know, did we get, I didn't see a results page. Maybe you can see it, Cindy. Let me know.
Sorry about that. I probably closed it too soon. 49% say new division or department that will use Cityworks Server AMS. 14% say new division or department that will use Server PLL. And 47% say we are good where we are.
Ah, okay. So pretty good. Some of you guys are thinking about doing something new with AMS or PLL. And hopefully today, you know, you got some pretty good information from the presentations previous to mine that you're got some ideas that you may want to implement. And hopefully, as we go through this presentation, some of these things that we're going to talk about can help you kind of think through what you want to do when you get started. So with NewEdge Services, when we start an implementation, we of course do a big kickoff meeting, and we bring in GIS and IT department heads, division heads that we're working with, just to kind of give them an idea of what's going on and how this, this implementation is going to work. And there are three key questions that I always start off with. And sometimes we have answers to these three questions that you're seeing here, and other times I have to really work and pry to get some answers out of the clients for these three questions. And we're going to go through each one, because really these three questions, if you stop and think about them and you really think about each one of these and how it applies to you and your implementation, then you're going to save yourself a lot of not heartache, but you're going to save yourself a lot of questions and things that you could already have figured out prior to starting an implementation. So our first one, why are you implementing Cityworks? Always ask that question. And my typical responses that I usually get are just basically, we don't have anything, we don't like what we have, or my favorite, we need some reports. So those are pretty darn generic. And if you're doing implementation internally, or if you're having a third party vendor do your implementation or implementation partner, these are extremely generic and they really do not help us get prepared for your implementation. So instead of answers like this, what I really try to pry and pull out of my clients are answers that are more like this. You may not have anything, but now you're needing a system that can track, work activities, okay? We don't like what we have, but instead of that answer, a better one is, our current system doesn't allow us to schedule preventative maintenance or do scheduled work orders, those kind of things. Instead of just need reports, you could come back and say, we need a detailed sanitary sewer overflow report, or the EPA is requiring that we do A, B, C, and D, and we need to be able to generate these reports. Because really with these three answers, or those kind of more detailed answers, that helps us configure Cityworks in a way that you're going to be able to accomplish those things and the why you're implementing Cityworks right off the bat. Okay. The second question that I asked, where have our previous systems failed? So even if you are pen and paper, or you're using another third-party system, whether that could be internal or external, I always want to know why. Why are we moving you off of it? Why did it fail? And some of the typical responses that I get are just, we did it ourselves. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have enough training. We didn't have support. We had scheduling issues. And maybe it was all of those. I've had clients that, all those things got them into trouble when they were doing an implementation. So I have another poll, and Cindy's going to do that here for me. That basically I'm asking you, have you encountered any of those issues when you've been doing an implementation? And of course, I added the answer that nope, it went beautifully, and we didn't have any issues, because I'm curious about that as well. So we'll give everybody a few seconds to answer that. All right, Cindy, think we got it?
They're still pouring in.
Okay, awesome.
5 more seconds. Okay. Let me share that. There we go.
All right. Oh, more than I expected, actually, that we did it internally, that they did it themselves. Not enough training, yeah. And 14% of y'all, it went beautifully. All right. So headed back to my presentation. So we're going to kind of go through each one of those, because really these responses on why our previous systems have failed can really, if you think about each one of these things and why, and really kind of sit down and discuss it, then you can not let history repeat itself, kind of thing. So for example, let me get my control back. There we go. We did our own implementations. Well, a lot of times what I see when clients do their own implementations is that they do not bring in the experts, whether that be internal or whether that be external. For example, if GIS and IT is slated with installing Cityworks, but they know that they're going to be doing that for water and sewer, and they have one meeting with those guys and they install Cityworks. Well, you haven't really explored very much with your experts that are going to be using the software. So you don't really know how to configure it to match their workflows and how they operate, and vice versa. If you're in permitting and they're like, oh, we have this great software system called PLL and we want you to implement it and we want you to install it. If you don't bring in GIS and you don't bring in IT, then once again, you have no idea how this software system is going to tax your servers, your network, how you're going to get it to the guys in the field. So once again, bring in your experts, bring in those people that you know that are going to be using the software and are going to maintain and administer the software as well. Including your division personnel. If you bring in your experts and you bring in those people that know the software and they know the workflows and what they're going to be doing, then you're already starting to build communication. You're already starting to work with your users on how they're going to use the software and how it's going to be maintained. And those things aren't figured out later in the implementation. They're figured out even before you sign a contract or an RFP or release an RFP. The third one is really important. And once again, if we were all together, then this would be really applicable, because what I see a lot of times is that, they want to implement another division or department like plants, but they don't know where to start. There's a lot of Cityworks users out there that use Cityworks to maintain plants. They're in their GIS, they're in their Cityworks application. So really tapping into those resources outside of your community to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, you can really get a lot out of that. Now, I should have really bolded and put in red and made it like 4 times larger, is the not enough training, because I hear that a lot, and it's a big failure for previous systems when I'm bringing people off of a third-party system into Cityworks, no matter what it is, if it was homegrown, whatever. It's always, we didn't get enough training. And a lot of times is the training plan is not discussed, and what the expectation of the training plan is not discussed, either at a kickoff meeting or even before the kickoff meeting. It's not really thought about, and it needs to be thought about, because no software is going to get off the ground and be useful unless your users are trained on how to use it from the bottom up. From the bottom up. If you're expecting field guys to go out there and input data, they need to be trained. Don't rely on a supervisor or somebody to train the trainer kind of thing. Get them trained initially. And sometimes that comes into budget, okay? But if you can budget for that initial group of training and then also continued training, because when you start a software system, that initial training before go live is pretty much just getting you off the ground. I mean, when NewEdge goes in, and we're doing training and we're training users, a lot of times we're not going into the nitty gritty of creating inboxes, redlining, those advanced topics that are in Cityworks. Instead, we're just like, this is how you do service requests, work orders, and inspections. Just to get some good data into the system and knowing that the users are trained and that they know how to do that. Because then if you have a training budget and you've put in your budgets for 6 months from go live, every year after go live that you have continued training, then you can come back and you've got good data and you can look at reports, you can look at inboxes, you can look at EURL, you can look at all of those things, especially that Longview and Rockwall and College Station and even Independence we're talking about earlier. But you've got to have good data in there. Even if it's a new department that's coming in, you want to make sure that they've got their training budgets approved and ready to go. And one thing that I see a lot is that, and we have to get pretty strict about this with our clients, is that you allow and give your users time to come in and participate in that training. Now, we understand if a water main breaks or something like that, and we lose our class because they've got to go take care of that, that's one thing. But it's if they can't come in just simply because they don't have the crew or they have to serve, they have to do that that time, then they're losing that valuable training time. So you have to give them the time to participate in the training. And I spent a little bit more time on that bullet than I wanted to, but it's pretty important. It's really important, and it's really important that you keep that training budget going year after year, because people change, personnel change, all that good stuff. A lot of things that were discussed in the previous presentations also was upper level support, and just getting that support from directors, supervisors, assistant city managers, even if you need to, because really when you have that support from the upper levels, you don't run into that do we really need to know this attitude. And it's happened, and it does happen. I mean, you have a lot of guys out there that they've been doing the same field jobs forever, and this is a new change for them. And if they don't have to learn it, or if they don't think they need to learn it, then they'll fight you on it. So having that support and just that, it's time to learn this. This is the way things are going to go. And then once again, vice versa. If you include those people from the very beginning, from the discussions at the beginning, and get them involved, then they know that it's going to go this way. It won't be the day of training. It'll be like, we have no idea why we're here. It's like, no, we've been talking about Cityworks for 8 months now, a year now, and this is the direction that the city is going to go. Now, if you address all three of those items, talking about how we're going to implement our training budgets, we've got support. A lot of times I see that scheduling issues and project management issues really occur because those three items are not addressed. But if you start addressing those now, or even before you start your implementation, your tasks are already going to be coordinated. They're already going to be coordinated between departments and divisions. Because you've been talking about it, you've been discussing it. Even your field guys know that it's coming, so it's not a surprise. That's going to facilitate expectations because you've already communicated that to everybody involved. And then the scheduling issues, not enough time for training, that goes out the window because you already know that you're going to train everybody and that they're going to have the time that they need to understand the software. So that third question I ask, it's like, okay, so what is your vision? We've talked about the why we're implementing, but now I want to know what the vision is. And kind of what I see the difference between those two when I ask that question is the why we're implementing is taking care of an immediate need. We need to track the work that's being performed because we haven't been doing that. We need to generate reports because we got the EPA knocking on our door and we need to do some work for them. We need to be able to generate reports for them. Expense reports. We need to be able to do that because we don't know what we're spending, in a fiscal year. Those are immediate needs that when you go live, those are going to be addressed. But if you take it a step further and think about your vision, like what I saw from Longview and Rockwall and College Station and all those guys, they talked about the implementation of doing it citywide. They knew that they were going to do integrations with third-party vendors. They had a goal for asset management and using insights for that. So to further budget planning. Now, you may not go live with all that right off the bat or with your first division or department, or even if you bring on another division or department. Water and sewer could be doing great with all that, but now you're bringing on parks. Well, once again, they have to go through that time frame that they get used to the software, and then maybe later you bring them into more of an asset management program. But if you have those goals and you communicate those goals with your implementation team, then you know how to build Cityworks. You don't put yourself in a box that if you're going to bring on another department later, or you're thinking about bringing on PLL later, that you have to go in and rejig the entire software or the entire database to make that work. You already know what the goal is and what the future looks like. So you can kind of be prepared for that, and your implementer can build the software where you can easily bring on those other departments. So really, Whoops, I think I lost control. There really, oh, my bad, there we go. So really what to think about, just those 3 simple questions. Those 3 simple questions that if you and your teams just sit down and kind of talk about them before you really get into the nitty gritty of an implementation, you know, if you really think about that, then you sit down and you already have a communication plan. You've already started talking about this with other users and other vendors. You have an implementation plan. You know what's going to go first. You may know what's going to come second and down the road. You may do all of your departments in one go because your current system you're working on is not going to be supported in a year. So you have to move everybody. Or maybe your goal is more, let's bring them on one at a time. So it's a little easier to implement throughout the city. You have a budget plan. It's already there. And once again, if you start talking about these 3 questions with your teams and your users before implementation, you already have the involvement and you already have the support that you need to get this going. So I have one more poll that Cindy's going to do. And basically, it's just if you are one of those that are thinking about bringing on a new department or division, you know, how are you going to do it? You're going to do it, you thinking about doing it internally? You're going to bring in an implementation partner? Or you're going to have Cityworks do it? We'll give y'all a few seconds to answer that. All right, should be getting close. There we go. So a lot of you are going to be bringing in an implementation partner. Perfect. Internally, we have a few, and then some you're going to bring in Cityworks. Oh, perfect, perfect, perfect. So really what I want to talk about then is just some of the things, just some experiences that I've had that really, no matter if you're doing it internally, hiring an implementation partner, or talking with Cityworks. There's a few things that you might want to start that you should be working with your partner on. And I don't really want to say that these 4 things derailed a project, but they definitely were some things that through my years of doing implementations, I got better and better at discussing each one of these earlier in the project so that it wouldn't come up at the end and could delay a go live or push the schedule back that we had to buy more stuff or whatnot. And the big one, which has got the biggest piece of the pie in that chart, is if you're doing a field deployment, start your procurement process ASAP. Know how many users you're going to have, know what devices they're going to use, and get them in their hands as soon as possible. I have been in trainings where Monday morning we are handing out iPads to the people that we're training. So not only do these guys that have just been going out and doing their work in the field every day like usual for 20 years, they now have to learn how to use an iPad, VPN into a network, turn on Cityworks, and then learn how to use Cityworks. So, I mean, that is so overwhelming to some of these guys. So if they can get those devices in their hands, figure out how to get on the network, or if it's an external site, how they get to the external site. You know, if you're going to make them use email on that device, let them figure that out. And then when Cityworks training and go live comes around, that's all they're focused on. All they're focused on. Very, very, very important. So, you know, take that into consideration, and it's definitely something to talk about internally and with your implementation partner as well. Because another thing, and it's just, it's ridiculous, and it's not beneficial for anybody if we train them on a laptop or a desktop, and then the next week when coming back for on-site support or when they go live, you put an iPad in their hand. They're just not going to know what to do. training them on the devices that the person is going to use is very, very important. It just gets them comfortable before go live. GIS data. So a big one with GIS data, generally everybody's pretty good with water, sewer, streets, addresses, that kind of thing. But when we start getting into the related assets, such as plants, traffic signs, buildings for facilities maintenance, a lot of times our clients don't have that in their GIS systems. So we work through with them what those related assets look like, what they should look like. But if you know that you're going to do traffic and you want your signs on a pole as related assets, the sooner you can start building that in your GIS or communicating that to your implementation partner, the better off you're going to be. Because another thing that's not very useful in a training is showing users how to do it one way, and you're like, well, it's going to be different in the GIS next week. So when we come back, we'll show you a different way to do it. That's just another thing that your users are just going to get frustrated, and they're not going to do the best job of getting that data in as they should be. Support is actually the purple piece of the pie, and you know, we've already talked about that. The more support you get, the less and less you're just going to have of that, you know, do I really need to learn this? Do I really need to know this? I don't care mentality. The less people you can have falling asleep in your training because they don't care, the better off you're going to be. And then the last one, resources and staff. That's our green piece right here. So it's a lot of times that we're starting to talk a lot with our clients just about, you know, what do client resources look like during an implementation? Well, we're going to require a lot out of you when we come in initially for a kickoff meeting, or your implementation team should be expecting a lot of the division or the departments or the users when you get started and at the end. That's going to be a very high resource level on the client side. You know, that, and your clients could be your parks department, they could be your water and sewer department, but you're going to require a lot of them at the beginning and at the end. And you want to make sure that they know that, so once again, they have time to attend training. They're scheduled that everybody's involved in kickoff meetings and that kind of thing. During the configuration time periods and workflow assessments and those kind of things, the resource goes down a little bit. And then of course, when it's just your implementation partner putting in employees, materials, equipment, you know, that's very, very little time that we will need from your users. But, you know, just having those client resources ready to go is very important. Like, for example, parks. You know, a lot of times parks doesn't like to do implementations during the summer, during the spring, the summer, and the fall, because they're mowing all the time and they're prepping ball fields constantly. So it's a bad time for them. So winter is a good time for a parks go live. So, you know, just kind of keep that in mind. So our Cityworks, I mean, this is just our NewEdge implementation strategy, and really, truly, it hasn't changed much in the 12 years that we've been doing, that NewEdge has been doing implementations. We've tweaked it a little bit, especially when PLL came on board, that we had to do more reviews, more meetings with our clients to understand workflows and that kind of thing. But really, all in all, this strategy has not changed, because we get a lot of those 3 questions that I talked about out of our clients at the kickoff meeting. And if you do that even prior to the kickoff meeting, then as you go through your implementation strategy to go live, you're going to have less and less issues, because these are things that you've already thought about, and you're not going to hit them when you get to training and support and you're handing out iPads. So really, this was my last slide. This was kind of my just my summary, you know, just really kind of, hopefully this helped, just some strategies and things to think about, whether you're bringing on that full new public works department or you're simply bringing on code enforcement. These apply to across the board to anything.